Hello to everybody and warm greetings from Hamburg. My name is Baas. I'm CEO of Techniker Krankenkasse, Germany's biggest health insurance. I'm very sorry I cannot be with you today in person, for I think if you have a discussion of morals and machines, healthcare is one of the topics that clearly should be in the spotlight. So even if I know how much I myself often get bored by those video attendances, I would like to share some thoughts with you and do hope the fascination of the topic will overcome the dullness of the medium. For in particular, I would like to consider in greater detail today whether, in the future, doctors will be rendered superfluous by artificial intelligence. Will we come to rely on AI in terms of our health? In essence, medicine has always been based on three pillars: the humanity, with which doctors and nursing staff care for the ill; the technical expertise, required to take blood, change bandages, and perform operations, etc., and science, that has seen enormous progress over the past decades. Having a surgical training myself, some would say I should focus on the technical expertise. But actually, when you put those three pillars in perspective, it is clear that over the past decades, the focus, of course, has increasingly been on science. New equipment, new treatments, and new medications have revolutionized the field of medicine. Organ transplantations are regular procedures, diseases that killed hundreds of thousands of people can now be cured, and even gene therapies are being launched into the market. This gives us reason to hope that we will soon be able to heal illnesses that, up to very recently, were considered incurable, among those many kinds of cancer. At the same time, doctors have ever less time for their patients. It would seem that the human factor has been left behind when, on average, a GP in Germany has 7 minutes for each patient. But now, the medical revolution is around the corner. And this time, it won't come from a lab, but from a computer. And above all, will be driven by data. For example, AI is being used successfully in pharmaceutical research to simplify the search for chemical structures through machine learning and to predict mechanism of action. The results from experiments are transformed into new hypotheses, and ultimately, a new active agent might be discovered. Artificial intelligence is already part of the doctor's toolset too. For example, it can recognize black skin cancer based on image recognition very reliably. Face2Gene is an app that detects rare hereditary diseases using a facial photo. It allows the wide range of possible diagnoses for children with unusual facial shapes to be narrowed down prior to specific examinations. These are just a few examples, but if you think them through, one question comes to mind. Will we still need doctors in the future, or will there just be AI operators? The question isn't pure science fiction. Some of you may have heard of the 1-minute clinics from Chinese insurance group Ping An. The clinic is a box measuring 3 square meters in which patients sit in front of a computer and an AI-based diagnosis is given by checking symptoms. Should AI be pushed to its limits, the patient is connected to a doctor via video. The medications prescribed either by AI or the doctor are then dispensed by the machine straight away. So will we all, in the not-too-distant future, find ourselves sitting in a box or at home talking to a computer instead of visiting a doctor? My hypothesis is, for the near and midterm future, AI will not be able to fill that role, and that is for a couple of reasons. Today's AI systems are still weak. Strong AI systems, meaning the machine would be indistinguishable from human mind, are still only a theoretical construct. Garbage in, garbage out is also very true for AI systems. Database errors lead to incorrect results. Good examples here are racial and gender bias. Mistakes in medical guidelines and the state of science knowledge are perpetuated by AI. And lastly, AI still lacks something fundamental, namely human intuition. This is the reason behind the failure of the AI project IBM Watson Health. The treatment recommendations given by AI were either obvious or they were wrong. Furthermore, the system failed to offer additional or innovative ideas for potential treatments. So you might think the essence of my little talk would be AI is just an overhyped technology with very limited use in medicine. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. I'm deeply convinced AI will become an absolutely indispensable and life-saving tool in the very near future, and that is not for replacing a doctor, but for something that no human can do, processing large volumes of data. For this will be compulsory if we wish to take advantage of digital progress. You have probably just heard Catherine Harden talk about the future of DNA technology. Patient data is, and increasingly will be, available in a quantity no doctor could ever hope to manually process. Knowledge and understanding around the world are advancing so rapidly that doctors are unable to know everything, even in their own field of expertise. even if they work in a niche sector and are highly specialized. This is further exaggerated by the fact that an almost incalculable amount of health data is generated on a daily basis in hospitals and doctors' practices as a result of imaging, lab diagnosis, and medical monitoring, but also in our homes. Looking ahead, this mass of data will continue to grow as digitalization advances. And in terms of wearables, we are just at the start of the journey. Modern smartwatches are already able to measure our pulse, the oxygen level of our blood, movement data, and create a simple ECG. All those who already wear a watch like this carry a health data treasure trove on their wrists. Yet the question remains, how can we use our health data in a meaningful and clever way? First of all, these data have to be somehow saved. At present, in Germany at least, we are faced with a paradigm that forces us to be extremely conservative with data. We pursue a philosophy of Datensparsamkeit that could be roughly translated by data frugality. While this does make a lot of sense in many areas, in regard to health data, it can and does cost lives. We need to modify this philosophy. It is no longer contemporary and prevents doctors from making the right diagnosis, prevents them from delivering the right treatment, and prevents researchers from developing new therapies. Most data that is currently stored is located on small, isolated data islands. Almost every hospital, practice, and smart device is an island. These islands can only be connected, if at all, via small bridges. We need to change this. When it comes to health data, a high level of network and interoperability is vital. All these data islands are of no good use to us if we cannot access and evaluate them. Equally, AI can only be valuable if it can draw from a good database. It goes without saying that each person needs to be able to control such networking individually. Furthermore, such data require particular protection since health data are among the most sensitive of all. I myself should be the only one who can determine who can access these data and how. By the same measure, data protection must not be constructed in such a manner that it actually prevents us from using the data. We need to find the right balance. Naturally, data security is a top priority, yet if we are overzealous, using it becomes impractical. As a little side note, I'm deeply convinced that the usage of healthcare data in compliance with data privacy and security standards might even become a competitive advantage of Europe in comparisons to the US and Chinese offerings. So, in my opinion, it is essential that we use these data. Failing to do so would not only impede medical research, but also pose specific risks. At the end of the day, data can and does save lives. In the foreseeable future, AI will not be able to replace human doctors or render them superfluous. Yet, doctors will use the information from AI to supplement the overall picture. As such, in the future, we will not outsource our health to AI, rather we will use this as an additional and very valuable tool. The key to ensuring success here is the expedient and value-creating use of the health data. This will not make doctors superfluous. After all, they have intuition and sometimes, even if they are surgeons, empathy. But the use of the AI in the healthcare system will enable doctors to make diagnosis using a broader database. And I'm convinced this will ultimately lead to the next big step in medicine. And since no drug comes without side effect, it will also free up more time for doctors to engage with their patients. So coming back to the topic of this conference, it would be immoral not to use machines in healthcare, but it also needs the right moral to set the boundaries for their use. Thank you very much for listening to me and enjoy the upcoming sessions.